It was a simple act by an unassuming man, which touched an enormous circle of people, indeed an entire country. It provided an instant which people would remember for decades, exactly what they were doing at the time of the home run that beat Babe Ruth's great record of 714 home runs, which had stood for 39 years, whether they were watching it on a television set or heard it over the car radio while driving along the turnpike at night, or whether a neighbor leaned over a picket fence and told them about it the next morning. Its effect was far-reaching and more powerful than one would expect from the act of hitting a ball over a fence. The sports correspondent for El Sol de Mexico, almost overcome with emotion, ended his piece on the Aaron's 715th home run with thanks to God. "We lived through this historic moment, the most fabulous in the world. Thanks to God, we witnessed this moment of history." In Japan, the huge headlines in Tokyo's premier sports daily read haiku-like. "White ball dances through Atlanta's white mist," and under the subhead, "I saw it," the correspondent began, "In my Atlanta hotel room, I now begin writing this copy. I know I have to be calm, but I find it impossible to prevent my writing hand from continuing to shake." It caused tragedy. In Jacksonville, Florida, a taxicab driver shot himself when his wife pulled him out of his chair in front of the television to send him out to work just as he was settling down to the game. He died before the home run was hit. In what might have seemed an illogical place, the instant caught the commissioner of baseball, Bowie Kuhn, addressing a Cleveland Indians booster dinner in the Cleveland Stadium Club. In the controversy which had boiled up over Aaron's wish to skip the Cincinnati series and open in Atlanta before his hometown fans, the commissioner had ruled against him and ordered him to play. Kuhn had vowed to be on hand for 715, but the moment found him on the dais reminiscing about Johnny Allen, the Indians pitcher famed for disconcerting batters with a tattered sleeve on his pitching arm. Almost everyone else in baseball was in front of a television set. In Kansas City, the ancient black pitcher Satchel Paige had 17 of his family crowded around, all these sisters-in-law of mine, and when they saw the ball hit, they began shouting, and they could hear the people next door carrying on the same way. For those who sat in the stadium in Atlanta, their recollections would be especially intimate. The sharp cork-pop sound of the bat hitting the ball, startlingly audible in that split second of suspense before the crowd began a roar that lasted for more than 10 minutes. Perhaps that is what they would remember, how people stood in front of their seats and sucked in air and bellowed it out in a sustained tribute that no other athlete has ever received. Or perhaps they would remember the wonder at how easy and inevitable it seemed, that having opened the season in Cincinnati by hitting the tying home run number 714 with his first swing of the year, it was obviously appropriate that the man called Soup by his teammates, for Superman, was going to duplicate the feat in Atlanta with his first swing of that game to break the record. That was why 53,775 had come. Or perhaps they would remember the odd way the stadium emptied after the excitement of the fourth inning, as if the crowd felt that what they had seen would be diluted by sitting through any more baseball that night. But finally, there were those in the core of that immense circle, the participants themselves, who would be the ones most keenly touched. The pitcher, in this case a gap-toothed Pleasant veteran named Al Downing, who of the more than 100 National League pitchers happened to be the one who threw a fastball at a certain moment that did not tail away properly. The hitter, Henry Aaron himself, for whom the event, despite his grace in dealing with it, had become so traumatic that little in the instant was to be relished except the relief that it had been done. The brave sports announcer, whose imagination for months had been working up words to describe the event to the outside world, and a young bullpen pitcher who would reach in the air and establish contact with a ball whose value as baseball's greatest talisman had been monetarily pegged at $25,000, and whose sentimental value was incalculable.